Hello, class. This is Dr. Brown for CST-158 Server Plus. We're going to be going over Lab 3, the Fedora server install. And a couple of things that you need to keep in mind is you need to configure your VMware shell, download the Fedora software and install it. And then for this exercise, we're going to configure a static IP manually through a VI editor. So let's go ahead and get started. We will go ahead and create a new virtual machine. And like before, we're going to make it custom. Make it workstation 16, or if you're not using 16, if you're using 15 or 14, make it the latest version. You're going to install the operating system later. This time it is going to be Linux, and you're going to look for Fedora, which will be up here, right there. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and choose Fedora 64-bit because I will be downloading a 64-bit operating system. Okay. And I'm going to rename this just Fedora, just Fedora. And you can leave it with one processor. We're just going to be using command line. You can keep it at 2 gigs. If you can knock this down as far as like 512 meg. All right. Again, you're just using command line, not that big of a deal. So I'm going to keep it at 2 gigs because I know my system can support that. It's not a problem. But if you don't have as much RAM on your system, you can go down as low as 512. We're going to use NAT, so it's on the proper network. Keep it with LSI as the IO. Keep it with SCSI as the disk type. And we're going to create a new virtual disk. That disk can be 20 gigs. You can drop this as low as like 10 gigs if you're low on space. I'm going to keep mine at 20. I'm going to split it into multiple files. Keep the disk file default. And that's it, guys. That is it. That's all made. Now, to get the Fedora Server Iso, if you open up Google and just do a search for download Fedora, 34 is the latest and greatest version of the server. So I have the Fedora 34 standard ISO image for x64. All right, there's a standard install and there's the net install. The standard install is the full-blown ISO. That's what I'm going to go with. It's going to be a few gigs. So I'm going to kick that off here immediately. Yeah, it's going to be 2 gigs. Not too bad. And let that start downloading. So that should be downloaded here in a couple of minutes. It's going to go to my download folder. And then just like I did with the Windows Server ISOs, I'm going to move that from my download folder to my virtual machine folder. And then point the Fedora shells CD, DVD to that ISO, start it up, and we're going to start the install process. So I'm going to just pause here for a minute or two while this download completes. So my download is done. So I'm going to go to my downloads folder. And I'm going to cut that ISO. And I'll move it to my virtual machines folder, which is under documents, virtual machine. I'm going to paste it there just so I can stay organized more than anything else. Then I'm going to go back to VMware to that Fedora shell that I just created. And I'm going to go into the CD DVD and click on that. And I'm going to point it to that Fedora ISO. So it's under documents, virtual machines. And there's the Fedora ISO. Select it. I'm going to select open. And that's about it. Click OK. And now we're ready to install. So all we have to do from this standpoint is click power on the virtual machine. And we go through the steps to install Fedora. So I'm going to go ahead and select install Fedora and hit enter. The screenshots that are in the lab, they may be from an older version, like 28 or 33 or whatever. The steps look pretty much the same. So if you worry, you get confused, oh, mine says 34 is in the lab, it says 28. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I just haven't updated the slides. So it's going to boot up here. If you see these install Fedora 64-bit, would you like a physical computer? Just you can click the X and just get out of that. All right, you don't need to see that. So it'll go through its installer. I'll ask you a series of questions. And I'm gonna give you a tip and a trick here, because if you do this correctly, you can set up your Fedora machine with a static IP address right out of the gate and not have to worry about going through and doing everything manually. So I'm going to teach you how to cheat, but that's okay. So we're going to be English, United States. Continue. We're going to go ahead and set up the installation destination. All right, so we're going to select our hard drive, make sure that check mark box is there. It's going to be automatic installation. We're going to click done. All right, so that little warning is going to go away. Now, if you go into network and host name, okay, it is set up for DHCP. So you're going to see the Ethernet connection is the name of it is ENS33. All right, if we click configure here, we can give it the IP address right out of the gate. So we can go to IPv4 settings. We can add that IP address right in here. If you go back and look at your lab and scroll down to the topology, you can find that the IP address for the Fedora is 192.168.1.210. 192.168.1.210. Remember that. And you just put that in here. Its net mask is going to be 24-bit. And know what your gateway is. So my gateway, I think I made 192.168.1.2. If it's not 1.2, it might be 1.1 on your system. You can try it either way, but I'm pretty sure mine is 1.2. That's the way I had. And you go into your network editor, like I showed you in the previous lab, to check that. Okay, so that's all set. We can set up our DNS servers here. So we can just put in 8.8.8.8, and we can separate those with a comma. All right. And we have our gateway, so we don't need to do any routes. This is going to be manual. So you need to set the method up to manual, not DHCP, but manual. Okay. And that's that. We're done. We're going to save that. Okay. And we'll click done. So that's all done. We can go through the other pieces of the installation. So we have local media, which is a DVD that we set up previously in VMware. We can set up software selection here if we wanted to. So there's all kinds of stuff that we can do. We're going to do a lot of this later on for installation purposes. You don't have to do that now. Let's make sure that we're in the right time zone. We need to set a root password. So go ahead and make it that CST-CCC 2019 exclamation point. And type it in twice. All right, you can lock the root account if you want to. I'm going to leave it unlocked for me because I like using root for instructional purposes only. It's easier to do administration that way. We can create other account here later. So that's all set and done. And let's go ahead and click begin installation. So now from here, it's going to go through all those software packages that are on that ISO file and install them. I'm going to go ahead and pause. It will go through a couple different screens. It will possibly reboot at the end of it before it's all done. This shouldn't take more, again, depending on how much RAM you gave the system, it shouldn't take more than about 15, 20 minutes tops. So we'll be back. So once that all completes, you're going to have a thing to reboot your system. Before you do that, let's go back over here to settings on your VM. And let's disconnect that DVD. So uncheck that box. All right, and disconnect it. And click OK. Click yes. And now let's reboot the system. Hopefully I didn't mess stuff up. I did. Oops. Maybe it does need it. All right. Let's power cycle it. There we go. So it just needed a kick. So maybe not disconnect it. There we go. So we're logged there. Yeah. So this is what we need. So now we can just make sure we disconnected it. I don't think I should have done it while it was live. I should have shut it down and then restarted it, but it's okay. It's just gonna have access to the DVD, so you can keep it on or turn it off. So now when we log in as root with that password we set, okay, we can do an if config, and we can see that we have 192.168.1.210. So in the instructions, if you did by some chance install this with DHCP, you can go to Etsy. And look for the netconfig. File, or yeah, let's do a cat of net config. Going the wrong one here. Sysconfig, sorry. Okay, so Etsy, sysconfig, network scripts. And this is where you can set up the file that's in the lab I have later on down here. You can manually set it up there with VI. So if you go into Etsy sysconfig network scripts, you can create an inconfig ENS file with VI, where the pound signs are the number. So mine would be ENS 33. How do I know it's ENS 33? That's what it gave me when I did the configuration, but I can also look at that through if config. See, it's ENS33, right? The network manager also can drive your network interface cards. All right, so if we look at the networkmanager.conf file, let's pipe it so we get the whole thing, pipe more. All right. So a lot of these things are commented out. Those are all daemons. All right, there's our ENS33 connection. That's under system connections. There we go. There's our IP specs. So this is where a network manager is setting everything. So it is, if you go into this directory, etc network manager system connections, and then you cat in the interface name ens33.net connections. This is the configuration file that is driving your NIC. So there's your UID, your type, auto connect priority, interface name. You can change all this stuff. You can go into VI, for example, and look at that file. And you can change anything up here that you wanted to. So you can change the IP address. You can change the gateway. So the IPv4 information, this is your address, your subnet mask, comma, space, your default gateway, right? Your DNS, your search method. There's no IPv6 information here, and that's it. So it's pretty straightforward. To get out of VI, colon, Q, exclamation point, you're back. All right. Finally test this. You can just do ping Google. Yep. And we have everything. We have DNS resolution, connectivity, the whole 9 yards. So we're set. So if you set it up manually in the first place with the installation, that's great. If you forgot about where to put it in the installation, again, the file that you're looking for to manipulate is going to be in this directory, etc network manager system-connections. And then the file is the interface name dot NW connections. So you go in that with a text editor, you can correct things there. Okay. So that's that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But other than that, happy installing. Thank you.